The massive space station called Harmony's Edge floated in the empty space between star systems. It was built long ago as a neutral meeting place for different alien races. Today, ships from 12 different worlds had come here for an emergency meeting. The reason was simple and terrifying to many. Humans had won too many battles. Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked through the station's main corridor. Her black hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her dark eyes showed no emotion. Behind her walked Admiral Chen, a small man with quick movements and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Dr. Sarah Okafor came last, carrying a datapad filled with numbers that would shock the alien leaders. The human delegation wore simple dark blue uniforms, with no fancy decorations. This was very different from what the aliens expected. Most species in the galaxy loved to show off their power with bright colors, strange symbols, and expensive materials. The main meeting hall was huge. It had a circular table that could seat 50 beings comfortably. 12 different alien species had already taken their places. Each group tried to look more important than the others. The Zephyrian Empress sat on a floating throne made of crystal. Her purple skin glowed softly, and her forearms moved in graceful patterns while she spoke to her advisors. The Zephyrians had ruled a quarter of the galaxy for over 1,000 years. They thought of themselves as the most cultured and intelligent race in space. Next to them sat the Vorthon Collective Prime, a being that looked like a giant insect made of metal and flesh. The Vorthons were known for their cold logic and perfect calculations. They controlled the galaxy's biggest trade networks and believed that everything could be solved with the right equation. The ancient ethereal sage hovered above his chair, his body made of pure energy contained in a glass-like shell. The ethereals were the oldest known race in the galaxy. They had given up physical bodies millions of years ago and thought they were wiser than everyone else. Other alien leaders filled the remaining seats. There were the war-loving Crexians with their battle scars and metal implants. The peaceful Malari sat quietly, their plant-like bodies swaying gently. The proud hegemony representatives wore their formal military uniforms covered in medals. When the humans entered the room, all conversation stopped. Elena noticed how the aliens looked at them. Some showed curiosity, others showed fear, but most showed the kind of look adults give to children who have been causing trouble. "Welcome," said the Zephyrian Empress, her voice sweet but cold. "Please take your seats so we can begin these important discussions." The humans sat at the only empty section of the table. Their chairs were plain metal, very different from the elaborate seats the other species used. Elena noticed this was probably done on purpose to make humans feel less important. The Vorthon Collective Prime spoke first. Its voice sounded like metal grinding against stone. "We have gathered here today because of the recent disturbances in the Outer Rim territories. The human expansion has created instability that threatens galactic peace." Admiral Chen's jaw tightened slightly, but he said nothing. Dr. Okafor continued to read her datapad, as if the alien's words were not worth her attention. The ethereal sage's voice echoed in everyone's mind rather than through their ears. "The humans have shown remarkable military success in a very short time. However, success without wisdom leads to destruction. We are here to help guide humanity toward a more appropriate role in galactic society." Elena finally spoke. Her voice was calm and clear. "We appreciate the invitation to these talks. Humanity has always preferred dialogue to conflict when possible." The Crexian war chief laughed, a harsh sound like metal scraping. "Your actions suggest otherwise, humans. You have conquered 7 star systems in just 2 years. You have destroyed fleets that were supposed to be impossible to defeat." "We defended ourselves," Admiral Chen said quietly. "Every system we took was attacking human colonies first. That is not the point." The Zephyrian Empress's forearms moved angrily. "You are new to space. You do not understand the delicate balance that has kept peace in the galaxy for centuries. Your actions upset this balance." Dr. Okafor looked up from her datapad for the first time. "What kind of peace requires some species to attack others without consequence?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Several alien delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The Malari delegate, who had been silent until now, spoke in a whisper-soft voice. "The humans ask dangerous questions. Questions that could destabilize everything we have built." Elena realized something important in that moment. These aliens were not here to negotiate with equals. They were here to put humanity back in what they thought was the proper place. The peace they talked about was really a system where strong species could do whatever they wanted to weak ones. The Vorthon Collective Prime activated a holographic display showing a map of the galaxy. Red areas showed human-controlled space, which was tiny compared to the vast territories controlled by the other species. This is what humans currently control, the Vorthon said. As you can see, it is a very small portion of galactic space. We are prepared to be generous and allow humans to keep some of this territory. The word allow made Elena's blood run cold. These beings thought they owned the galaxy and could give pieces of it to humans like treats to a pet. The hegemony representative, a tall being with blue skin and silver eyes, leaned forward. The Galactic Council has spent much time discussing the human problem. We have reached a fair solution that will benefit everyone. Elena noticed he called it the human problem, as if humanity's very existence was something that needed to be fixed. Admiral Chen was watching the aliens carefully. In his 40 years of military service, he had learned to read enemies. These beings were not afraid of human weapons or ships. They were afraid of something else. They were afraid that other species might start to copy human behavior. Dr. Okafor had stopped pretending to read her datapad. Her scientific mind was analyzing everything she heard. The aliens kept talking about stability and peace, but they never mentioned freedom or justice. Their perfect galactic order was built on keeping most species weak and dependent. The ethereal sage spoke again, his mental voice trying to sound wise and caring. Humanity is young and full of passion. This is not necessarily bad, but passion without guidance leads to chaos. We offer to share our millions of years of wisdom to help humans find their proper place. Elena stood up slowly. The room fell silent. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone who represented an entire species. Before we discuss any agreements, I think we need to understand each other better. What exactly do you mean by proper place and appropriate role? The aliens exchanged glances. They had expected the humans to be grateful for being included in these talks. They had not expected direct questions that challenged their basic assumptions. The Zephyrian Empress tried to smile, but it looked more like a threat. We mean that every species has natural strengths and weaknesses. Some are meant to lead, others to follow. Some are meant to think, others to work. Humans have shown they are excellent fighters and builders. These are valuable skills that should be used for the greater good of all. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. The aliens were not talking about partnership or equality. They were talking about putting humanity in a box labeled useful servants and keeping them there forever. The meeting was just beginning, but Elena already knew it would not end the way the aliens expected. Humanity had not fought its way to the stars just to become someone else's tool. The second day of talks began with ceremony. The ethereal sage performed an ancient ritual that was supposed to bring wisdom to all who watched. Lights danced in the air while he spoke words in a language so old that only 3 species could understand it. Elena thought it was impressive, but she also noticed it was meant to remind everyone how much older and supposedly wiser the ethereals were than humans. When the ceremony ended, the real business began. The Vorthon Collective Prime activated another holographic display, this one showing detailed star charts and trade routes. We have prepared what we believe is a fair and generous offer for humanity, the Vorthon announced. Its metallic voice echoed in the large chamber. After careful analysis of human capabilities and galactic needs, we propose the following terms. Elena sat straight in her chair, her hands folded calmly on the table. Admiral Chen had his arms crossed, and Dr. Okafor was recording everything on her datapad. The 3 humans looked relaxed, but they were all paying very close attention. First, continued the Vorthon, humanity will be permitted to retain control of 3 star systems of their choice from currently occupied territories. These systems contain adequate resources for human development within acceptable parameters. The Zephyrian Empress gestured gracefully with 2 of her 4 arms. This is quite generous. Most new species are given only 1 system when they join galactic civilization. Elena noticed the phrase "join galactic civilization." It sounded friendly, but she was beginning to understand it meant something very different. The Crexian war chief slammed his armored fist on the table, making several smaller aliens jump. 3 systems is more than enough. Humans have proven they are dangerous fighters, but they lack discipline. They need structure, rules, guidance. The Vorthon continued as if the Crexian had not spoken. Second, all human military forces will be reduced to defensive capabilities only. This means no ships larger than cruiser class, no weapons capable of orbital bombardment, and no military bases outside of designated human territory. Admiral Chen's face remained calm, but Elena saw his jaw muscles tighten. The aliens were basically asking humanity to cut off its own arms and legs. Third, the ethereal sage's mental voice drifted through the room. Humans will accept Galactic Council oversight of their technological development. This is for the protection of all species. Human innovation, while impressive, lacks the wisdom that comes from experience. Dr. Okafor looked up sharply. As a scientist, the idea of having her research controlled by beings who had never even met a human was personally insulting. The Malari delegate spoke in her soft voice. Fourth, humanity will contribute to galactic stability by providing military service when requested by the Council. Human fighters will serve under experienced commanders from established species. Elena translated this in her head. Humans would be used as soldiers in other people's wars, with no say in when or why they fought. The hegemony representative stood and walked around the table as he spoke. Fifth, human population growth will be managed according to galactic standards. Each system can only support a certain number of beings without creating resource problems. We will help humans plan their families responsibly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Elena felt something cold and angry growing in her chest. These aliens were talking about controlling how many human children could be born. The Vorthan Collective Prime brought up the final point. Sixth, humans will pay a development tax to the Galactic Council. This tax will fund improvements to galactic infrastructure and support Council peacekeeping efforts. The tax rate will be set at 15% of total human economic output. Elena did quick math in her head. 15% of everything humans produced would go to support a government they had no voice in. The Zephyrian Empress spread all four arms wide, as if she was giving a wonderful gift. In return for accepting these reasonable terms, humanity will receive full protection under galactic law, access to established trade networks, and the benefit of our combined wisdom and experience. The room fell silent. All the alien representatives looked satisfied, as if they had just solved a difficult problem. They clearly expected the humans to be grateful for such a generous offer. Elena stood slowly. She looked around the table, meeting the eyes of each alien representative. When she spoke, her voice was perfectly calm. Let me make sure I understand correctly. You want humanity to give up most of our territory, most of our military, control of our technology, control of our population, and 15% of our wealth. In exchange, you offer us protection from threats and access to systems we would have no voice in controlling. The Vorthan nodded. That is an accurate summary. We believe this arrangement benefits everyone. And if we refuse these terms? Elena asked. The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. The aliens no longer looked friendly or patient. The Crexian war chief's hand moved to his weapon. The Zephyrian Empress's glow became brighter and more threatening. The hegemony representative stopped walking and stared directly at Elena. The ethereal sage's mental voice became cold. Refusal would be unwise. Humanity is strong, but you are alone. We represent over half the galaxy. Economic sanctions alone would cripple human development. Military action would only be necessary if humans chose to be unreasonable. Admiral Chen finally spoke. You're threatening us. We are explaining reality, the Vorthan replied. Cooperation brings prosperity. Isolation brings suffering. Elena sat back down, but she did not look worried. Instead, she looked thoughtful. Dr. Okafor, what is humanity's current industrial capacity compared to 3 years ago? Dr. Okafor consulted her datapad. Industrial output has increased by 320%. Ship construction has increased by 400%. Our mining operations now extract more resources per month than most council species extract per year. Several aliens shifted uncomfortably. These numbers were much higher than their intelligence report suggested. Admiral Chen, Elena continued, what is the current size of our defensive fleet? Admiral Chen smiled for the first time since arriving at the station. As of last week, we have 2,416 ships of cruiser class or larger. We also have 8,000 smaller vessels and approximately 50,000 automated defense platforms. The Crexian war chief stood up so fast his chair fell over. Impossible! Our scouts reported no more than 300 human ships. Your scouts saw what we wanted them to see, Admiral Chen said calmly. The Malari delegate whispered something to her neighbors. Elena caught the words underestimated and dangerous. Elena looked around the table again. You seem surprised by this information. Did you really think humans would come to negotiations without knowing our own strength? The Zephyrian Empress's glow flickered. These numbers, they change nothing. Quantity cannot overcome the quality and experience of established galactic powers. Dr. Okafor spoke up. Actually, our analysis suggests otherwise. Human manufacturing efficiency exceeds galactic standards by an average of 40%. Our ships are faster, more heavily armed, and require smaller crews than comparable vessels from any council species. The ethereal sage's mental voice carried a note of anger. Arrogance. You have been in space for barely a century. We have ruled the galaxy for millions of years. Elena stood again. This time her voice carried the weight of absolute conviction. Then maybe it's time for a change. The alien stared at her in shock. No one had ever said anything like this in a council meeting before. The idea that the galactic order might need to change was unthinkable to them. The Vorthan Collective Prime tried to regain control of the situation. Humanity must understand that individual strength means nothing against united opposition. If you refuse our generous terms, you will face the combined might of 12 species. Elena smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. 12 species who have grown soft from millions of years of unchallenged rule. 12 species who haven't fought a real war in centuries. 12 species who think strength comes from age instead of determination. The room erupted in angry voices. Several aliens stood and shouted in their own languages. The Crexian war chief drew his weapon halfway before remembering where he was. The hegemony representative pointed an accusing finger at Elena. Through all the noise, Elena remained calm. She had learned something very important. These aliens were not as confident as they pretended to be. If they were truly all-powerful, they would not need to threaten humanity. They would simply act. The ethereal sage used his mental powers to force silence on the room. This meeting will continue tomorrow. Humanity will have one more day to consider our offer and accept the wisdom we have shared. As the aliens filed out of the chamber, Elena heard them whispering among themselves. Some sounded angry, others sounded worried. All of them sounded like beings who had just realized the galaxy might be different than they thought. Admiral Chen waited until they were alone before speaking. They're scared. Yes, Elena agreed. The question is, scared enough to be reasonable or scared enough to do something stupid? Dr. Okafor looked up from her datapad. Based on their psychological profiles, I'd say stupid is more likely. Elena nodded. Then we better be ready for anything. The third day of negotiations began differently. Elena and her team arrived early and had rearranged their section of the table. Instead of sitting in the chairs provided by the station, they had brought their own equipment. Admiral Chen had set up a small holographic projector. Dr. Okafor had several data pads arranged in front of her. Elena had a single folder made of real paper, something most aliens had never seen before. When the alien representatives arrived, they noticed the changes immediately. The Zephyrian Empress looked annoyed that the humans had altered the careful seating arrangement. The Vorthan Collective Prime scanned the human equipment with its mechanical eyes, trying to understand what it was for. I trust humanity has had time to consider our generous offer, the ethereal sage said, his mental voice carrying confidence. We are prepared to finalize the agreement today. Elena stood and opened her paper folder. The sound of pages turning was strange in a room full of advanced technology. Several aliens leaned forward, curious about this primitive human custom. We have indeed considered your proposal very carefully, Elena began. In fact, we've prepared a counter-proposal that we believe better serves the interests of all parties involved. The aliens exchanged glances. Counter-proposals were not something they had expected. In their experience, junior species either accepted council terms or faced the consequences. Elena began reading from her papers. First, the Galactic Council will formally recognize complete human sovereignty over all currently held territories, with full rights to expand into unclaimed space according to standard galactic law. The Crexian war chief laughed harshly. Ridiculous. You cannot dictate terms to the Council. Elena continued as if he had not spoken. Second, the Galactic Council will provide formal reparations for the unprovoked attacks on human colonies at Kepler 442, Ross 128, and Proxima Centauri. These attacks resulted in the deaths of over 30,000 human civilians. The hegemony representative stood up angrily. Those were not attacks. Those were police actions to maintain order in disputed territory. Disputed by whom? Admiral Chen asked quietly. Humans settled those worlds. Humans built the cities. Humans died defending them. Who exactly was disputing our right to be there? Dr. Okafor activated her datapad and projected images into the air above the table. The pictures showed burned cities, destroyed farms, and mass graves. These are what your police actions looked like from our perspective. Several of the smaller alien delegates looked uncomfortable. The Malari representative actually turned away from the images. Even some of the major powers seemed disturbed by the visual evidence of what their forces had done. Elena turned to the next page of her proposal. Third, the Galactic Council will issue formal apologies and provide reparations for the enslavement of species that have allied themselves with humanity. The Centauri Mining Guild and the Tau Ceti Agricultural Collective were both classified as primitive and subject to forced labor until human intervention. The Vorthan Collective, Prime's mechanical parts whirred angrily. Those species were barely out of their industrial age. They required guidance and structure. They required freedom and respect, Elena replied, both of which they now have under human protection. The Zephyrian Empress's forearms moved in agitated patterns. This is absurd. You speak as if humanity has some special right to interfere with established galactic law. Elena looked directly at the Empress. We believe all sentient beings have the right to determine their own fate. Apparently, this makes us unusual in your galactic community. The ethereal sage tried to use his mental powers to project calm and authority. Humanity does not understand the complexities of galactic governance. These systems exist for good reasons, developed over millions of years of experience. Dr. Okafor stood and activated Admiral Chen's holographic projector. The display showed detailed statistics and charts. Actually, we've done extensive analysis of your galactic governance systems. Would you like to see our findings? Before anyone could object, she began her presentation. Council species control 97% of galactic territory and resources, but represent only 12% of all sentient species. The remaining 88% of species are classified as developing, primitive, or protected, which means they have no voice in galactic affairs. The numbers floated in the air where everyone could see them. The smaller alien delegates shifted nervously, while the major powers looked angry at having their system analyzed so publicly. Dr. Okafor continued. Resource distribution follows a similar pattern. Council species consume 85% of galactic resources, while non-council species survive on the remaining 15%. This creates artificial scarcity that keeps developing species dependent on council approval. The Malari delegate spoke in her whisper-soft voice. These statistics, they oversimplify complex relationships, and do they? Elena asked. Or do they simply show the truth that your complex relationships are designed to hide? Admiral Chen activated another display showing military deployments across the galaxy. Council military forces are positioned primarily around developing worlds, not along borders between Council territories. This suggests the main threat to galactic peace comes from those you claim to protect. The Crexian war chief slammed his fist on the table again. Military deployment is based on security needs. Developing species are unstable and require monitoring. Like humanity? Admiral Chen asked. Were we unstable when you attacked our colonies? The war chief hesitated. Humans had not yet learned proper protocols for expansion. We hadn't learned to ask permission before settling empty worlds, Elena corrected. There's a difference. The room fell silent as the implication sank in. The human analysis was devastating because it was accurate. The galactic order was not designed to maintain peace. It was designed to maintain power for those who already had it. Elena turned to the final page of her proposal. Fourth, the Galactic Council will restructure its governing body to include proportional representation for all sentient species. No species will be classified as primitive or denied a voice in galactic affairs. The Vorthan Collective Prime's voice rose to a harsh shriek. Impossible. Inexperienced species cannot be trusted with important decisions. As opposed to experienced species who have created a system based on oppression and forced dependency? Elena asked. The ethereal sage's mental voice became cold and threatening. Humanity forgets its place. You are newcomers to space. barely past your first century of interstellar travel. You cannot simply ignore millions of years of established order. Elena closed her folder and looked around the table. You keep talking about established order and experience, but you never talk about justice or freedom. You never ask whether your system is right, only whether it's old. Dr. Okafor provided the final piece of their presentation. Our projections show that a free and fair galactic community would be more prosperous, more stable, and more innovative than the current system. Everyone would benefit, including current council species. The Zephyrian Empress's glow became blindingly bright. Benefits? You think we need benefits from inferior species? We have ruled the galaxy since before your son was born, and in all that time, what have you accomplished? Admiral Chen asked. Where are the great works, the amazing discoveries, the bold explorations? Your ancient empire seems to spend most of its time making sure nothing ever changes. The insult hit home. Several alien representatives began shouting at once. The hegemony delegate accused humans of arrogance. The Crexian war chief questioned their sanity. The Vorthan Collective Prime calculated the probability of human survival if they continued on this path. Through all the noise, Elena remained calm. She had delivered humanity's message clearly. Now she waited to see how the aliens would respond. The ethereal sage used his powers to force silence again. These proposals are completely unacceptable. They would destroy everything we have built, everything we have worked to preserve. Or they would improve everything you've built, Elena replied. But only if you're willing to admit your system might not be perfect. The Malari delegate whispered something that sounded like dangerous thoughts. The smaller alien species looked confused and frightened. They had never heard anyone challenge the council so directly. The Zephyrian Empress spoke with deadly calm. Humanity will withdraw these ridiculous demands and accept our original terms. You have until tomorrow to provide an answer. Elena gathered her papers and closed the folder. We've given you our answer. The question now is whether you're willing to listen. As the meeting ended, Elena noticed something important. The alien representatives were no longer talking to each other with the easy confidence they had shown before. Some looked angry, others looked worried, but all of them looked uncertain. For the first time in millions of years, someone had challenged not just their decisions, but their right to make those decisions. The galaxy was about to discover that some ideas were more powerful than fleets. The fourth day began with tension thick enough to cut with a knife. The alien representatives had spent the night in emergency sessions, arguing among themselves about how to handle the human problem. Elena and her team had spent the same time, reviewing their options and preparing for what was about to happen. When the meeting resumed, the aliens had clearly chosen their approach. The ethereal sage spoke first, his mental voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Humanity has had time to reconsider its position. We trust you have realized the wisdom of accepting our original offer. Elena looked at her colleagues. Admiral Chen gave a small nod. Dr. Okafor had already packed her datapads. They were ready. We have indeed reconsidered, Elena said, standing slowly. And we've reached a decision. The aliens leaned forward expectantly. They had convinced themselves that humans, faced with the reality of their situation, would back down and accept council terms. We reject your offer completely, Elena announced. The Crexian war chief jumped to his feet. Then you choose war. No, Elena replied calmly. We choose independence. The Vorthan Collective Prime's mechanical parts whirred in confusion. Independence is not an option. No species can survive alone in the galaxy. We're not alone, Admiral Chen said. We have allies. What allies? The Zephyrian Empress demanded. No council species would dare support rebellion against established order. Dr. Okafor smiled. You're right. No council species would dare. But there are hundreds of species that aren't on your council. The smaller alien delegates exchanged nervous glances. They had never thought about the non-council species as potential allies for anyone. The hegemony representative tried to sound reasonable. Humanity, you must understand the consequences of this decision. Economic sanctions alone will cripple your development. No council species will trade with you. No council ships will visit your systems. You will be cut off from galactic civilization. Elena picked up her folder and tucked it under her arm. Your version of galactic civilization, maybe, but as Dr. Okafor pointed out, you only represent 12% of all sentient species. We're quite interested in meeting the other 88%. The ethereal sage's mental voice became threatening. Military action will follow if humanity continues on this path. You cannot fight the combined might of the entire Galactic Council. You're probably right, Elena agreed. But the question is, can you afford to fight us? Admiral Chen activated his holographic display one final time. The image showed detailed star charts with human positions marked in blue. But now there were other colors as well. Green for human allies, yellow for neutral systems, and red for Council forces. 3 months ago, these talks began, Admiral Chen explained. Since then, humanity has contacted 47 non-Council species. 31 of them have signed mutual defense agreements with us. 12 more have signed trade partnerships. The remaining 4 are still considering our offers. The aliens stared at the display in shock. While they had been planning how to control humanity, humans had been building their own alliance network. The Malari delegate's whisper was barely audible. How is this possible? We monitor all communications. You monitor Council communications, Dr. Okafor corrected. You never bothered to watch what non-Council species were doing. Why would you? They weren't important enough to matter. Elena walked toward the chamber's exit. That's been your fundamental mistake from the beginning. You think power comes from controlling others. We think it comes from working with others. The Zephyrian Empress's 4 arms gestured frantically. You cannot simply leave. These negotiations are not finished. Elena paused at the doorway. Yes, they are. We came here hoping to find partners. Instead, we found masters looking for new slaves. We're not interested in that relationship. The Vorthan Collective Prime calculated frantically. Economically, this makes no sense. Council trade networks are vast and profitable. You cannot replace them with primitive species. Those primitive species control resources you've never bothered to catalog, Admiral Chen replied. They also have needs you've never bothered to address. It turns out there's a lot of profitable trade to be had when you treat people as equals instead of subjects. The Crexian war chief drew his weapon halfway. We will not allow this rebellion to spread. Other species must see what happens to those who defy the Council. Elena turned back to face him. And what exactly will happen? You'll attack the Centauri Mining Guild, the Tau Ceti Agricultural Collective, the Kepler Defense Union, all of our new allies? Admiral Chen added helpfully, that's 43 star systems with full military protection under human defense agreements, plus another dozen systems with trade relationships that might object to their partners being attacked. The room fell silent as the aliens realized the scope of what had happened. While they had been arguing about how to control humanity, humans had quietly built an alternative to the entire galactic order. The ethereal sage tried one last time to assert authority. This meeting is not over. Humanity will remain and continue negotiations. Elena walked back to the table and gathered the few remaining items her team had brought. Admiral Chen, Dr. Okafor, we're leaving. The 3 humans moved toward the exit with calm purpose. Behind them, the alien representatives erupted into chaos. You cannot walk away from the Galactic Council, the hegemony representative shouted. We just did, Elena called back without turning around. The Zephyrian Empress's glow became so bright it hurt to look at. This is unprecedented. Unthinkable. No species has ever simply left Council negotiations. Maybe that's because no one ever thought they had a choice, Dr. Okafor suggested. As the humans reached the chamber door, the Malari delegate spoke up in her soft voice. What happens now? What happens to the rest of us? Elena paused and looked back at the small, plant-like being. That's up to you. Our new alliance is open to any species that believes in freedom and equality. Even Council species, if they're willing to treat others as equals instead of subjects. The Vorthan Collective Prime's voice rose to a mechanical shriek. Impossible. The galactic order cannot simply be replaced. It's not being replaced, Elena said. It's being ignored. There's a difference. Admiral Chen held the door open for his colleagues. We'll be too busy building something better to spend time tearing down something broken." As the three humans left the chamber, the aliens sat in stunned silence. No one had ever walked away from the Galactic Council before. The concept was so foreign to their thinking that they literally did not know how to respond. The ethereal sage tried to project calm authority, but his mental voice carried uncertainty. "They will be back. They must be back. No species can survive without council approval." But even as he said it, he knew it might not be true. The humans had already proven that many of the council's assumptions about galactic politics were wrong. The Crexian war chief was the first to recover from the shock. "We attack now. Destroy their ships before they can leave the station." "With what justification?" the hegemony representative asked. "They came here under safe passage guarantees. If we attack them now, every species in the galaxy will know we cannot be trusted to honor our own agreements." The Zephyrian Empress was thinking more strategically. "Let them go. We will deal with this rebellion properly, with full council support and careful planning." But as the alien leaders continued to argue, something important was happening throughout the galaxy. News of the human walkout was spreading through communication networks. Species that had never dared to question council authority were suddenly asking new questions. If humans could walk away from the most powerful organization in the galaxy, what did that mean for everyone else? The age of unquestioned council dominance was ending, and it was ending not with war or revolution, but with three humans who simply refused to accept that things had to stay the way they were. In the station's docking bay, Elena and her team boarded their ship. As they prepared for departure, Elena received a communication from Admiral Chen's fleet. "This is Admiral Rodriguez of the Human Defense Force. We have 43 ships standing by to escort you home, Ambassador." Elena smiled for the first time in days. "Thank you, Admiral, but I don't think we'll need an escort. Something tells me the Council has more important things to worry about than 3 humans flying home." As their ship pulled away from Harmony's edge, Elena looked back at the station one last time. Inside, 12 species were learning that the galaxy was much bigger than they had ever imagined. 6 months after the humans walked away from Harmony's edge, the galaxy was unrecognizable. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood in her office on Earth, looking out at the busy space traffic around the planet. Ships from dozens of different species came and went constantly, carrying trade goods, passengers, and most importantly, ideas. Her assistant, a young diplomat named Marcus Webb, entered with the morning reports. "Ambassador, we have updates from the Outer Rim territories." Elena turned from the window. "What's the latest?" Marcus consulted his data pad. "The Altair Consortium just voted to join our alliance. That brings us to 67 member species. The Centauri Mining Guild reports that 3 more systems have requested protection agreements and..." He paused, looking uncertain. "And what?" "The Vegan Trade Federation wants to discuss leaving the Council and joining us instead." Elena raised an eyebrow. The Vegan Trade Federation was not some small, powerless species. They controlled major shipping routes and had been Council members for over 2,000 years. What reason did they give? Marcus scrolled through his notes. Their official statement says they're concerned about the Council's inflexible response to changing galactic conditions. Unofficially, our contacts say they're tired of having their trade policies dictated by species that haven't done actual commerce in centuries. Elena sat down at her desk, which was covered with reports, proposals, and communication requests from across the galaxy. Each document represented another crack in the old order. Any word from the Council itself? They're still meeting an emergency session. It's been running for 3 weeks now. Elena nodded. She had expected this. The Council had never faced a situation like this before. Their entire system was built on the assumption that they controlled access to galactic civilization. Now that assumption was proving false. Admiral Chen entered the office, followed by Dr. Sarah Okafor. Both looked tired but satisfied. "Elena, you need to see this," Admiral Chen said, activating a holographic display. The image showed a star chart of the galaxy, but it looked very different from the one they had seen 6 months ago. Blue areas marked the human alliance, which now included dozens of star systems. Green areas showed independent species that had mutual defense agreements with humans. Yellow marked neutral territories. Red still showed council space, but it seemed smaller somehow, less connected. The old trade routes are breaking down, Dr. Okafor explained. Species that used to ship everything through council-controlled systems are finding new paths through Alliance territory. We're offering better rates, faster service, and no political strings attached. Elena studied the map. What about military developments? Admiral Chen smiled grimly. The Council's been trying to organize a response force for months, but they're having problems. The hegemony wants to attack immediately. The Zephyrians prefer economic pressure. The Vorthons are still calculating optimal strategies. Meanwhile, the Crexians are demanding command of any military operation, which terrifies everyone else. They can't agree on how to fight us. They can't even agree on whether they should fight us. Some council members are starting to ask whether we're actually the enemy, or just competition they're not used to having. Dr. Okafor brought up another display showing economic data. Alliance territory is experiencing unprecedented growth. Our member species are trading more, building more, and innovating faster than they have in centuries. Meanwhile, council space is stagnating. Elena walked back to the window. She could see a massive construction project in Earth's orbit, a new type of space station designed jointly by human engineers and Centauri architects. The design was beautiful and functional in ways that neither species could have achieved alone. What about the smaller species? The ones the Council used to protect? Marcus checked his datapad again. 43 have joined us directly. Dozens more have signed trade agreements. The interesting thing is what they're saying about Council protection, which is, they're calling it the protection racket it always was. Join us or face the dangers of space alone sounds very different when there's actually an alternative available. Elena's communication system chimed. Her secretary's voice came through the speaker. Ambassador, you have an urgent message from the Malari delegate on Harmony's Edge. Elena activated the communication link. The plant-like Malari appeared in holographic form, her leaves rustling with nervous energy. Ambassador Vasquez, the Malari Collective wishes to formally request membership in the Human Alliance. Elena was surprised. The Malari had been council members for thousands of years, one of the few smaller species with full representation. What changed your mind? The Malari's whisper-soft voice carried deep sadness. Yesterday, the council voted to increase tribute requirements for all minor member species. They say it's necessary to fund increased security operations. We realize that we're not members of the council. We're just better treated slaves. Elena felt a mixture of satisfaction and sympathy. What about the other minor council members? We've been talking, quietly. The vote yesterday was educational. 7 of us are considering similar requests. After the communication ended, Admiral Chen shook his head in amazement. If the minor council species start leaving, the whole system collapses. The major powers depend on tribute from smaller members to maintain their fleets and infrastructure. Dr. Okafor was already running calculations. Based on current trends, the Council will lose effective control of galactic trade within 2 years. Their political authority might last longer, but only over species that have no other choice. Elena sat back down and activated her own communication system. Get me President Chen in Beijing, Prime Minister Okonkwo in Lagos, and Director Rodriguez at Luna Base. We need to discuss expansion protocols. As her staff worked to arrange the calls, Elena reflected on how much had changed. 6 months ago, humanity had been a minor player trying to survive in a galaxy controlled by ancient powers. Now they were at the center of a new order based on cooperation instead of domination. Her communication system chimed again. This time, the caller ID made everyone in the room stop what they were doing. It was the Galactic Council itself. Elena accepted the call, and the ethereal sage appeared in holographic form. He looked exactly the same as always, but his mental voice carried something Elena had never heard before. Uncertainty. Ambassador Vasquez, the Galactic Council requests formal discussions regarding current galactic developments. Elena noticed he hadn't used the word negotiations. After what happened at Harmony's Edge, that word probably left a bad taste in their mouths. What kind of discussions? The Council wishes to explore possibilities for cooperation between established galactic institutions and emerging organizations. Elena translated in her head. The Council wanted to find a way to work with the Alliance without admitting they had been wrong about everything. Are you prepared to? recognize the sovereignty and equality of all Alliance member species. There was a long pause. The Council is prepared to discuss new frameworks for interorganizational relationships. Elena looked at Admiral Chen and Dr. Okafor. Both nodded slightly. Very well. We'll consider formal discussions. However, any meeting will need to include full representation from all Alliance members, and all parties will participate as equals. Another pause. This would be unprecedented. So was walking away from your last set of negotiations. We seem to be making a habit of unprecedented things. The Council will consider your terms. After the communication ended, Marcus looked confused. Are they actually going to negotiate with us as equals? Elena smiled. They're going to try to find a way to maintain their authority while accommodating new realities. It won't work, but they have to try. Admiral Chen was studying the star charts again. What happens if they refuse to adapt? If they try to use military force? Elena walked back to the window and watched another ship arrive. This one carrying delegates from a species that had just declared independence from Council oversight. Then they'll discover that the galaxy has moved on without them. We're not trying to destroy the Council, Chen. We're just showing everyone that there are other ways to live. Dr. Okafor brought up the latest reports. Speaking of other ways to live, we have 3 more species requesting Alliance membership, 2 independent systems asking for protection agreements, and 1 very interesting development. Which is? The Zephyrian Empire is dealing with internal rebellions. Apparently, several of their subject species have heard about our concepts of self-determination and representation. The Empress is facing demands for autonomy from systems that have been under Zephyrian control for millennia. Elena felt a moment of sympathy for the Empress, despite everything. Change was never easy, especially for those who had the most to lose from it. As the day ended, Elena stood alone in her office, looking out at the stars. In 6 months, humanity had gone from fighting for survival to offering hope to an entire galaxy. Not through conquest or domination, but simply by proving that things could be different. Her communication system chimed one last time. This time it was a message from Captain Sarah Martinez of the exploration ship New Horizons. Ambassador, we've made contact with the Andromeda Communications Network.